Let me start. Let me share my screen. Google Chrome and let's go. Okay, I hope you all can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Last time we were talking about React and how we can integrate map into our application using React components, what we have seen so far. But I think today I'm going to be focusing on a little bit of backend and hosting. Developing the application, and once it is developed, we need to do some hosting with this application. There are certain aspects we need to be covering when we are hosting an application. So anyone here have experience on hosting a website, maybe somewhere free or somewhere paid? Anyone have done? Yes. Raise your hand, please, if you have done hosting a website. Okay, Padma has done it. I think, Padma, your mic is not working. Can you elaborate where did you host and what sort of things you have done? Maybe in the chat. Okay, he has hosted the application in AWS S3 bucket. Yeah, that is one option where you can get the storage and host it there. Yeah, there are like a couple of ways that we can host these websites. Most of the time, we can go with the front-end application. We'll be hosting inside what we call a web server. Okay, web server in this scenario, when we are developing the application, you can see that we are not using any battle tested or anything related to professional hosting, but we are using a development server to host our application. So the development server, what it does is it's helping us to overcome a few situations. Like if we take, for example, if you take the example, like if you are hosting for your local environment, the NGX or NXS server is totally fine. But if you try to host this in a production environment, it won't work. It is not the optimal way of hosting a website. So most of the time we will be using a production grade web hosting or web server. You guys might have seen or heard the terms like Apache HTTP, one of the most Apache HTTP server. Okay, one of the most friendly servers that you can rely on, really easy to handle, and most commonly used this server. And one advanced server, one of the most developer friendly or developer developers are like using to deploy heavy applications. We use Nginx. Okay, so in favor of Apache HTTP or Nginx, I would prefer Nginx because Nginx comes with a lot of capabilities. Of course, Apache HTTP project also comes with that, but Nginx provide a lot of capabilities out of the box. So I like, from my personal preferences, I would like Nginx over Apache HTTP. So these kind of servers you can rely on to do web hosting. But in our application, we will try to get Apache in our application, and we will try to serve our application. But right now, what we'll do is we will try to host this application somewhere more free of charge. Maybe we will be using Firebase. Firebase is one of the easiest and free places where you can host your website or some kind of a static site like this. So I think we can do deployment of this application to Firebase, and we'll see whether it works or not. Okay, but prior to deploying an application, there are certain things that you should consider, especially when in terms of building the application, the size of this application, whether we have optimized it to production and all those things. So we need to make sure those things are in place. But most of the time, if you do not do anything rational, your application should be production ready. So first thing that you would do, I would open up a terminal. File. Come on. Showing the terminal in here. Terminal. Okay. So what I would do is within our project, let me position this a little bit different. Split terminal. Oops. Delete. Oh. So first thing that we should do in order to deploy this application is to build this application. So if you're using something like Angular CLI or XCLI or NX CLI, the basic thing to do is call this NX build command or ng build command. So what we'll do is it will optimize our application for production. So when we are developing this application to production, there are certain things it will do, like bundleization, and you can see these files are having different file names. Okay, you can see that chunked files are having different names. So anyone knows why this thing is changed? What this represent? Anyone have any idea why this kind of name changes happen? Why this kind of things happen in the first place? Anyone? Raise your hand. Okay, so the main reason behind this naming is, of course, we can have main.js, but style.js, polyfill, and these names as well for the application itself. But if you guys can remember, caching is a huge problem when it is coming to web applications. Say, for example, everything, say for page map module is named right after that. What will happen is, if we did not invalidate the cache, then the latest version would be shown to the user. Okay, to overcome this, what will happen is, if you have added any code into this module, if you have done any changes within this module, probably you guys know the terms like hashing. So, or this JS file is undergone through a hash. So whenever a bit is changed, the hash change. Okay, the hash value change. So this is the name of the file, and followed by is the hash it generated. I think as I can remember, this is using a very low level of hash, SHA-512 or something like that. So whenever we hash this file, it will generate a unique number. So in that scenario, what will happen? The caching issues will be resolved all the time. So we don't need to worry about invalidating the cache. The file is always having a different name, so it will be automatically loaded via the browser. If you have old file, it will not be loaded. But the latest version or the file which has been changed, it will be loaded. So it won't affect anything that is not changed. Okay. So SHA is only changes if you change in the code itself. So if you want faster deployments, do not change any other files if they are not unnecessary. So the changes would generate a new file which will generate a slow loading time, at least. So if you are really changing something in the map, do not touch other things. So it will generate a new file, and that hash will have some loading time and loading effects. Give me a minute, guys. Okay. There are some construction going on. You might hear the weird noise. Ignore that for a moment. So the files have been generated. So how we can find those things? If you go to the Project Explorer under distributed, you'll find two categories, one for browser and one for server. This happens because we have enabled server-side rendering. You guys can remember we enabled server-side rendering for PWA. That is the main reason we are seeing this kind of two deployments, server one and browser one. So we are mainly interested in this browser one because this is much more easier to handle and easy to serve. So you guys can see that the corresponding files are in here, as well as the map files, as well as the polyfills and everything. It is here. So our application is generated. We can actually serve and see whether this application really works. Okay, but in order to do that, we can use something like not the built-in tools, but a simple server. So I will go into the distributed ELAN browser, and yes, browser dir, and within this dir, I can say Python. I am having Python 3, so I will use Python HTTP server. So what it will do is, using Python, I will start a simple Python server. It will launch this application in port, if I can remember, it's port 8000. Now, if I go to my browser and hit localhost 8000, you would see the same application. But if you inspect the elements, you will see that the network, within the network tab, it is loading very browser optimized files. You can see that the files are comparatively small, and these things are loading very fast. If you guys can see that whole application is taking around 700 kilobytes in maximum for this initial load. So that's one of the good things that we can come across. And You need password. Yeah, so the application is working, lazy load is working, so we can just change this application and see how it's behaving in the production set. Yeah, that's the simplest part of the application, and we'll see how we can deploy this application in a place like Firebase. So we'll go and deploy. We'll go first. We'll have to go to Firebase. Okay. If you don't have a Firebase console access, you better create a Google account and go to Firebase. So most of the time we use Firebase for multiple purposes. There is, I think you guys have a lecture on Firebase, right? At least mobile application development. Raise your hand if you are familiar with Firebase. I have worked at least with Firebase. Yeah, I think everybody should have a Firebase experience, right? Because we did in, if I remember correctly, mobile computing with this. Anyhow, so we'll go to Firebase and we can add a new project, or I can use an existing project. So creating a project is like clicking here and there. I will go for an existing project that makes things easy, but feel free to create a new one if you want. And if you go to under build, and if you go to hosting, there'll be several things to get started on hosting, Firebase hosting. So this has limitation. You can't like host dynamic server, but something like what we have built, you can host it in here. So what we'll do is we will get started. Okay. So first thing that you will need to do is installing the Firebase CLI. Let's do that. Firebase tools. Let me incorporate that. Delete this terminal. We paste this, and it will install the Firebase tools. So Firebase tools are basically a tool set that help us to deploy this application and set up the initial things when we want to update the application. There are like simple steps that you need to follow, but it is not like rocket science kind of thing. Basic steps that we need to follow, then we can do the hosting parts in Firebase with the built application. Let's give it a couple of minutes to install. Okay, I think it's almost done. And let's go to the next one. And next thing that you need to do is login into Firebase, because we think using only the Firebase login that you will be able to go into the Firebase console, make the connection between Firebase console and our current project. Otherwise, what we'll do is we don't have any clue where to deploy this application, how to deploy this application. The Firebase tool is there, but the connection between Firebase and our project is done by logging into Firebase. Okay. Still installing. Install a Git. So while we are waiting, I think I can also look into several things with regarding the authentication as well. If we have time today, we'll go with the authentication as well. Okay, I think Firebase is initialized. Let me log in for Firebase console and allow collect, of course, no problem. Then we have to sign in for Google, and we will be using our Google account. And I will use the single sign-on. And Firebase CLI is successfully done in our terminal. Now we can do Firebase stuff. So the connection is made within the application and the CLI. Now CLI knows where to talk and everything. So what we'll do is within our main application within here, we will do is initialize this project Firebase int. Okay. So it will ask several things what we are interested in, what are the things that you want to configure within this project. Okay, of course, are we going to be using real-time database? Are we going to be using remote configuration, emulators? Probably we are interested in hosting. Storage. Yeah, let's go with the steps in here. When you are ready, put your static files in the apps directory. Default is public. Then run terminal in your approved Firebase deploy, and you will able to see your hosting. But in here, right now we are initializing. In the initialization phase, of course, we'll be interested in hosting, configure files for hosting, and Firestore the data. If you want to use the database or storage for some reason within this application, you can do that as well. I think for now I will go with hosting only. So we need to select a project. Okay, we can use the existing project, or we can use a new. We can create a new project. I will be using an existing project. It will list out the existing project within my account. As you can see, only one project is there. I'll be using that. And what do you want to use as the public directory? So this is one of the important aspect of our application. So if we have a directory called public within the application, what will do it? It will deploy that directory to the Firebase hosting. Right now, with this configuration, we have this dist elearn browser directory as the deployment directory. So we don't use something called public, but our distribution, where we want to deploy our application is residing on dist elearn browser directory. So what I'll do is I will copy the relative path and paste it in here. Now we are not going to be using the default one, public directory, but dist elearn browser. Okay. Configure single web page, rewrite all URLs to index HTML, because we are using index HTML. They are asking whether we need to rewrite or everything in here. We can say yes, since we are using one. Set up automatic distributions. We are not going into automatic distribution at this point, so I'm going to say no. So files, index already exists. Do you want to override? I will say no, we don't need to override that. Skipping override, write configuration, project information in here, and Firebase initialization complete. Now, if you go into our application, there are a few things that you will see. Firebase RC, okay, which says what is the default project, and Firebase JSON. Firebase JSON is like the configuration that we have gone through within here, and we can have those things in here. Right now, the hosting is only configured. We are hosting anything within this dist elearn browser directory, and we'll be ignoring these files because these files does not make sense, and the rewrite change strategy will be also here. Okay, so I think everything related to Firebase hosting is done. Now we have simply say Firebase deploy. Let's see how it goes. Deploying to the project that we have created, deploying hosting begin, and it's taking a little bit of time to upload the things. Okay, 34 files are there. Hosting completed and revision, everything done. Deployment is done. Now, if you go to the project console, you will have more information and hosting URL. Right now, the web application is hosted there. Let us go and see. Everything works fine. I think elearn came on. Now, if you guys are within internet, now you guys can log. I have put the link in the chat as well, in the Zoom chat as well. I put it in here. Now, if you guys can access, you will be able to go there as well. So this is pre-hosting, and you can see it is by default protected in HTTPS. That means you get what do you call the SSL certificate for yourself. So that's kind of good in terms of hosting a free application. And I think everybody can access, right? After we deploy it. And yes, there are 37 files, and use preview channel to sharing before going live. So everybody can access this. Raise your hand, please. Maybe okay. Others can't access. Hansa, can you access? Keep me carving this. Okay, so there you go. Application deployed into Firebase, and we can access it. And if you go to the map, it shows the map. And yeah, we have state management in here that works as well. And yeah, pretty much everything that you will need to deploy the application into at least working place. It's all in order. Yeah, any questions up until now with the hosting? Do you guys need anything to know regarding this section? Anyone? Chanaka, Hansa. No questions? Okay. So this is one option that we can do to host application. There are other options as well. If you like GitHub and GitHub pages, you can also host it there. So if you guys have seen my personal blog space, this is an Angular application as well, hosted in GitHub. Okay, you can do that as well if you like. There are free hostings, but you can actually host. Sorry, you can host these things with some other things as well in terms of Firebase. For example, you can use the real-time database, so it has a dynamic perspective to this application. You can use something like cloud functions, machine learning, cloud messaging. There are limitations to it, but at least you can now have a working application in internet, so you can use. So let's move on to more features that we can incorporate into our application. Let's see it in action. We'll introduce authentication to our platform. So when we are introducing authentication, there are a couple of things that we need to change with regard to the application now, but let's see how we can incorporate authentication. So there are signing methods that you can use. Say for example, you can have email and password, phone and numbers, or you can, if you guys have seen authentication or sign in using these kind of providers, there are things that you can use in order to authenticate within our application. Let's see this most simplest one. Let's go with email and password. Okay, we need to enable email password. And do we need the email link to be saved? Right now, I do not think that. So I will be hit save. So email related password is enabled. Anytime you like, you can add something like this. For now, what we will use is the email and password. Okay. Now let's go to the, these are like the templates. If you enable signing with an email link, these are the templates that we're going to be using. And we can see how many users are logged in and all those things. Right now, we are not in that kind of usage is not there. Let's see how we can log in, and we will see how we can get started. So in authentication, since we have enabled email and password, we need to add some users. Otherwise, we can't log into this application. So we'll add some the users in here. So I'll go to add users, and I will use the email. Let's say randik@gmail.com, and the password is, let me say, password 123, not a good password, but for testing purposes will work. randik@gmail.com, password 123, and we will add this password. Now you can see there is user ID and provider is email, and we can reset password, disable account, or delete account. So there is a user within our application. Now we will need to connect. We'll try to incorporate this application. We need to somehow connect to Firebase and authenticate using this username and password. Okay. So Next thing that you need to do is connect the Firebase and with the uh, connect Firebase with our Angular application. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to let's see integration. What's service account? These things are related to okay, if you go to project settings under here, and I think you will see the instruction, or you can get the Google service JSON. So you either of these files will be useful to authenticate our application, to use our application within somewhere. So we'll see the SDK instructions. So add Firebase to your Android app. We are not doing that. I think I have only enabled project overview. If you go to project, okay, sorry. First thing is that we need to add is a separate application type. This application is only this project actually only set up for Android use case only. But since we are using a web application within this within our project, we'll need to add another app. Okay, so we have Apple, we have Android, we have web, other frameworks like Unity and Flutter is also there. So I would go with web. Okay, add Firebase to your web application. So I will call this Angular web application. Okay, I think we have done we have set up hosting, so we are not worried about that. We have to register our applications. Then what we need to do is we need to do we can use the built-in script, something like this, in order to work with. So we need to configure Firebase from our application right around here, but probably if you're using Angular or React, we will find a separate instruction how we can incorporate these things. These things will perfectly work as we have done in here, but we will find Angular integration that makes things easy. Angular Firebase authentication. Let's see whether we have. Yep, there's a tutorial getting started. We have done these things. Yes, we need to install npm and Angular Fire. Okay, we will do that next. That makes things easy. So if you're using React, the approach would be same. So anyhow, we need to install Firebase. For connecting with Angular, we will use Angular Fire module package. So it will make things much more easier. Sure. Terminal, it's always coming up here. Not sure how you can move it here. Oops, did I accidentally kill that? Once again. So we have to make sure Firebase and Angular is there. Let's go to the tutorial while it is installing and add your Firebase configuration. So if you guys can remember, we have different environment TS files within our Angular application, which mean we can store the configuration in our application in these environments files. So these environment files are used to, if you go your application, learn, SRC, environments, there are two environment files. Okay, one for production. That means when we are deploying this application somewhere within like the build files, the production build, it will be using these environment variables.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, let me share my screen. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's got disconnected. So I was talking about the build profiles. One environment for production when you are running this in the build environment. That if you guys can remember, we use NX build. So when we are running NX build, it will be using whatever the environment variables that we have put it in here. If you are using the normal NX dev or development, it will be using files in here. So, in order to get, I think this might be not very good. Let me install it once again. So we need to take the Firebase related stuff out of this application. So if you guys can remember, we have this Firebase API key authentication and everything that is coming around in here. So we'll take that, the configuration, and put it in our environment variable. Okay, we don't need the value in here. Now this is the API keys and everything that we need to deploy this application or communicate with Firebase at least. These are the things that we need. So since we are using the same application for production as well as the development, I will copy and paste, because once we deploy this application into production, I need to use the same credentials. But if you're having a different one for production, different one for development, obviously you have to come here and change this Firebase configuration, one for development and one for production. Okay. Still this is installing. Let's give a few minutes to do that. Let's go for the tutorial at least for now. So next thing is we need to instantiate the Firebase Angular Fire module.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, let me share my screen. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's got disconnected. So I was talking about the build profiles. One environment for production when you are running this in the build environment. That if you guys can remember, we use NX build. So when we are running NX build, it will be using whatever the environment variables that we have put it in here. If you are using the normal NX dev or development, it will be using files in here. So, in order to get, I think this might be not very good. Let me install it once again. So we need to take the Firebase related stuff out of this application. So if you guys can remember, we have this Firebase API key authentication and everything that is coming around in here. So we'll take that, the configuration, and put it in our environment variable. Okay, we don't need the value in here. Now this is the API keys and everything that we need to deploy this application or communicate with Firebase at least. These are the things that we need. So since we are using the same application for production as well as the development, I will copy and paste, because once we deploy this application into production, I need to use the same credentials. But if you're having a different one for production, different one for development, obviously you have to come here and change this Firebase configuration, one for development and one for production. Okay. Still this is installing. Let's give a few minutes to do that. Let's go for the tutorial at least for now. So next thing is we need to instantiate the Firebase Angular Fire module. Okay, let me share my screen for the billionth time now. App module and Google Chrome. Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned, we will be using Firebase authentication module. So we will be injecting that as well, and then we will be going to Firebase auth within our application because we need that. We'll inject that in our login page. We have the login within the login module, login component actually. Form builder, we have the router, and we'll go with the Angular Fireauth as well. Okay, let me import that Fireauth. Source action. So imports. Format document. Shift F. Okay. Now you can see that Angular Fireauth is working. Now what we will do is we have the console log in here, which will get the username and password. We will change this to email, so that makes things easy. And in the form as well, we should use the form controller name as email. Okay. Now we should be able to see the form value with the email and the password. Let's go to our application, which is running on localhost, and we'll go to the home screen, and whatever I type, yes, the email and the password is taking place. So now we get the email and the password. Now all we have to do is authenticate using Firebase. So I will name this as email as well. Email. I can even type this as email. I'm not sure. Email is a type. Text is there for sure. Still works. Now what we have to do is we have to call Fireauth, sign in with username, email and password. Then we'll get the result and see whether what's happened. Okay. So we have the email and password. Let's construct this. Const email and password. We'll got this form login form group and value. So this is called a destructive objects. So from the login form group, if you guys can remember, it will give us an email and password. So we are extracting both those two into different fields in here. Now what we have to do is we have to do the login, this dot Angular Fireauth, login with email, sign with email and password. Yes, this one. And first we have to pass the email, which is email, and second one is the password, which is this one. And obviously, this API is not reactive, not using RxJS, but it is using promise and then. So we will use then for now, and we will try to evaluate or change this into a RxJS variant. Okay, from now we'll use then. Let's see whether it is working or not. If it is, then we will get a result. Okay. We will just simply log the result and see what's we are getting result. Okay, we'll just be out of curiosity. It will be a type of user credentials. So result has credential, operation type, and user. Additional info with these other things that we are getting. We can say the display name or email verified. There are a lot of things it returns. Right now, let's go with the email. Okay, so we authenticate our user, then the result come back, and with the result, it will contain the user details, and from there we will show the email of that user. Okay, and there is the catch section as well, which happens an error. So we will say error. We'll see what the error response is as well. Log error in here. Okay, so we have the success response. If it is giving success, then we will have the email, and if it is error, we will have the error as well. So we'll go back to our application. We will just try something dummy and see what's the response. And obviously you can see the Firebase is giving us an error. Firebase, the login component email address is badly formatted. Okay, that means something is wrong in here. We will go and once again, there is no user record respond to this identifier. That means we are not success. But if you guys can remember, we created a user within authentication. Users, we have randika@gmail.com. We'll go and see randika@gmail.com. Password was password 123, and if I try to sign in, password is invalid, does not have the password. Okay, let's see password 123. Firebase, the password is invalid or user does not have the password. Okay, that means let's change the password first. Reset the password. Let's add a different person. Delete this account. Yes. randika@gmail.com. Okay, password is password 1234. That's 04. Password 1234, and email is this one. Copy the email, add the user. Okay. Let's go in here. Paste. Oops. Paste. Password 1234. There you go. I think the password was wrong for some time. Now we are getting the username in here. Okay, so that makes sense. That means our login did work somehow. And if the login has succeeded, and let's say for example we give a fake password, it won't. It will give us an error. Okay, so up until now, any questions, guys? Do you have any questions regarding this? Any questions? Raise your hand. No questions? Answer? Geetni, Kavindi? Niroshan? Hello? You guys can hear me, right? Hello? Hansa, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So any questions up until now? With the login process, how we logged in? No questions? Nothing? Okay. Very bright students and the same people who are begging for, from my experience, who are begging for the final years. Sir, fail karan depa. Sir, komari C ekakවත් දෙන්න. I hope this page is different, not begging. At least if I'm asking a question, if you don't know, now is the best time to get the answers. Not in the answer sheet. I'm not giving marks. People who are asking for free marks, not that kind of thing. Okay, let me do one thing. So every time if I reload this page, I have to pass that in. So I will give these default values, not a best approach. I mean, not even recommended. I will hard code these values so I don't have to type in every time. And frankly, I might forget. Okay, so now everything is by default typed in. If you guys can remember, when we are creating the login form, we can create the form builder, and the null represent the initial value. Now initially we will give Randika and the password as password 1234. Okay, so this is like hard-coded values. Now every time we go there, it will be there, so you don't have to type in. And yes, it will show these things. Now the next questions comes in. Let's say, for example, we want to change the admin whatever.com to these things. So if you guys can remember, we have in here change to admin method. So we are dispatching an application. We are dispatching a command to change it. Okay, let's do that in our application. So we have email and password after login. Now what we'll do is we will change that. So we need to have the store control the application. So we will get the email from here. I'll just simply say const email. Okay, now I can dispatch an action store.dispatch new change user, and the email is what we need to dispatch. Okay, so email is either going to be null or can be null, because user can be null. So we will do a null check if email. That in the sense it says okay, if there is the email, then you can change the value. If it is not, you can't change it. So we will go back again. See, we have initial value admin whatever. I logged in, and you can see randika@gmail.com is shown in here. Okay, very easy. If I do it again, now you can see randika@gmail.com is the user that we have logged in. Okay, and let me do a quick adjustment in here. Let me put a spacer in here. Span style +1. It will go into the other area, which look nice. And yeah, when we hit login, and it will change to andika@gmail.com. Now, what we need to do is we can, let's say, for example, after a successful login, we need to redirect the user. So we can use the login component in here, and we can use the navigation after we done that. Okay, so we can say router.navigate to home. So we hit login, everything goes well, and it is logged into our home screen. Okay, makes sense. If we hit login again, it is going back to our login screen. Okay, so we have successfully logged in, and we are using what do you call, the promise section, but I would like to change this into a more reactive way using RxJS. So what we can do is we can rather than depending on then promise request, there is the option of there we can create a new observer using off, and if I can remember, I think I can use this directly. Yes, I think this should work. I will name this login const dot login. I will pass this to here. So Angular Firebase login subscribe. Within the subscription, we will use the pipe to tap it around. It is not the way. Let me check. Can't remember. Then to promise to observe. Observable. I need to see the command. From, okay. We need to use not off, but from. Okay. From RxJS. Yes, we have the user and everything is same in here. So I will call this result. Everything is gonna be the same as early on. And we need to subscribe. Okay, let's see how change works. Yeah, it works as expected. So when you are working with Angular, make sure to have things in one single way. Like if you're using RxJS, use RxJS. If you're using Promise, use Promise. But my recommendation is if you're using Angular, go with Promise, not Promise, but with RxJS. So we can convert this promise. This is a promise. Angular file sign in with email. It will return a promise. You can see the type in here. It's a promise. Not sure that you can see the promise Firebase credential. I can convert that promise into a RxJS observable stream using the operator called from, and I can pass the login promise, and then it works as something similar to an observer. Okay, so that helps a lot when you are converting. And if you go back and sign it again, now you guys can see this as well. So let's try this out for deployment for fun. Okay, Let me create a new terminal. First thing is that you need to do is build this application in gbuild. Otherwise, it won't work. I mean, it would work, but it will have the old version. It is generating the application. Okay, generated, everything is done. Now I will say Firebase deploy, which will deploy the application. Okay. Uploading new files, finishing and releasing here. And if you go to the same application that we used earlier on, you might need to refresh and refresh. Oh, it's the same application, right? Because it should not show this message in here. Yeah, there you go. So I have emptied out the cache, and now you can see Gmail and everything in here. If I hit login, and there you go, without an issue, you will be logged into the application as expected. Okay, so you guys can try that out. Yeah, but only this email and password is there. You guys need, if you guys deploying your own application, then probably you need to add all the users in here, and there's also sign-in methods enabled for you guys. You can enable sign in as well if you like, if you want. Right now, we are not looking into sign-in application at this moment. Yes, this application. Locally, it is working, and remember, the only reason that we are using the Firebase configuration for both of the places, it's the same, because we are developing the same application in development and build, so development and production. But most of the time, this changes. If you want to use, you might use two different keys. Okay, and map still works, so everything is working as we expected. Right. Any questions converting the application into sign-in? Now all you guys can do is sign-in is there. So basic application requirements are met for you guys. At least now you can try it out yourself. Okay. Yep. So any questions up until this, guys, with the login, and we have covered hosting, we have covered login. Anything else that you guys think would be helpful, I can incorporate. Anything else that you want to discuss? Okay. Silence means no. All right. Okay, I think that will cover up the Firebase and hosting and everything. We can continue the lecture series if you like. I think almost everything with the syllabus is covered. I mean, even more. Anything in particular that you guys think that I should discuss, you guys find interesting to have, so we can further go in the lecture series? please let me know. If you have anything now, we can even start since we have time. Anything from you guys that thinks, okay, it's good to know these things kind of situation? Anyone have any suggestions? Because this is a huge area. Web designing is mobile friendly development, everything we covered, but there are a lot of things that we can do, that we can cover. These are like smaller things that we have covered. Anyone need anything else? No? Okay then. If you have anything, just let me know. Otherwise, I think we can wind up for today. Right. If you come across anything that would you like to share or you'd like to discuss, let me know. We will further continue on that. Right, let me stop recording.